Okay, yes, thank you. It is better than yesterday, this microphone. So, yesterday I told you about the general evaluation of research science in the development of science in the Baltic Sea. Today I will present the impact of bonus, and the bibliometric data set here is the same, but now I will lift out bonus from this. And I was very happy that I was asked to do this task, because after having been 10 years in the advisory board, I left bonus 2013, and then I was asked to do this, and this is something I really wanted to do. I was so curious what bonus had achieved, and that's why I accepted to do this work. This presentation consists of 6 points. I will go through the publication volume, the publication patterns, how bonus influenced research topics, the scientific impact, cross-national cooperation, and I will end with some recommendations to bonus. It is slightly updated since I gave in the report, because I now also included most of the data from 2016, because they have a delay before these publications come into the Web of Science, so this is a little bit updated. As yesterday, I included in this study peer-reviewed scientific papers because they are quality assured and widely disseminated. When scientific results are not disseminated in this way, they do not contribute to the progress of science to a large extent, simply because other scientists, for example in Australia, they cannot find your work. And also not to evidence-based decision-making, because this requires that the work you present, the conclusions you draw, are quality assured, peer-reviewed. And since bonus is policy-driven and solution-orientated, it is also so that adequate dissemination of the scientific results to society are an absolute necessity. And my presentation here is mainly about the scientific impact, but I also have some conclusions about the dissemination to stakeholders, the science users in society. So I have considered bonus papers that are papers funded or co-funded by bonus in the acknowledgements. I also encountered a lot of papers, especially in Bonus Plus, where bonus was not acknowledged, but others were acknowledged. And then I deleted these papers. I also found a lot of papers that were not reported by the bonus project, simply because they were published after the projects ended, and then the scientists are working on completely other projects or in a similar way, but not within bonus, and then they write bonus in the acknowledgements, but they are not reported to the Secretariat. The research should also be carried out in the Baltic Sea area, of course, or have relevance for the Baltic Sea area. And this excludes some papers that were presenting scientific results that were relevant for bonus, but they were not mentioning any part of the Baltic Sea area in the publication. And then it is very difficult to find this publication also for other scientists, so not only for me, but for scientists who want to know what's going on in the Baltic Sea, what is relevant for the Baltic Sea. If bonus is funding a project which doesn't even mention the Baltic Sea, it is a problem for finding this research. It also excludes papers in conference proceedings and books, etc., because they are generally much less accessible and much less or not peer-reviewed, and they are not ranked in this Web of Science, so most of them you do not find in Web of Science. Some are there, but you cannot take this as a criteria because some of them are there and some of them are not there. So these were also excluded from this study. The publication volume. If we look at bonus, here you see to the left the structure of bonus from ERANET, ERANET Plus, and bonus 185. Then you see the timeline of bonus with the calls. The dots are the calls, and the bars are when the projects are running. And then you see the bibliometric data sets to the right, and I have 3 data sets, one called pre-bonus, one called non-bonus, and one called bonus. And non-bonus is running parallel to bonus, and the others are before. In this, I printed. So, in this first group, we found almost 3,000 papers, and in the second group, almost 5,000. And actually, I looked at 18,000 papers. I found 18,000 with the criterion Baltic or another part of the Baltic Sea, like Gulf of Finland or Kattegat. And there, it was often used in the references. So these had to be deleted. It could be about China and so on. But about 5% of these papers I really needed to download to see if it was Baltic Sea science or not. But we can say that in 15 years we published in the Baltic Sea almost 8,000 papers in almost 1,000 different journals. I calculated then what one paper would cost, and it seemed that in Bonus Plus the price of one paper was 50,000 euros around, and that is rather cheap, because I know that the Swedish Research Council counts with double this price for a paper in natural sciences, which means that bonus has been very productive. I could also use this very roughly to make a prognosis how many publications will bonus produce, and then I came to the conclusion that this could be between 1,400 and 1,600 in the period 2017 to 2024. And this is about 10% of the total volume of Baltic Sea science that is published in this way, and it will increase to about 20%. And then you say perhaps, this is not so much, but it is much if you consider that here I have included all Baltic Sea research and also a lot of basic research, because you cannot separate between environmental research and basic. So I have taken all Baltic Sea research, but not about insects in Baltic amber fossils, things like that, but research on the Baltic Sea ecosystem. And also in bonus, you have rather publications that are rather fundamental. For example, in the BaltGene, in the Bambi project, in the Blueprint project, they are very much basic research papers that would not come if I would have tried to make environmental papers only. And these papers are tremendous important because they also have a larger goal for monitoring conservation of biological diversity and so on. So this is absolutely necessary knowledge for the future. I have to have a little warning here. This prognosis is that if today's projects are as effective, as productive as the Bonus Plus projects, and there are some projects that produce very little, and you see the variation in the viable ecosystem call. There is one project which is exceptional, BOC3, who already published 58 publications, and then there is another project with only one publication. So there is a tremendous difference here in the same call. Next thing is publication patterns. And here I have taken all 640 international publications. So it is also including the conference proceedings. And here you can see, I don't know if I dare to use this one. Let's see. Yeah, here you see the proportion of these papers that are not in the data set. So, and it is increasing, and that is something of a warning, because I think it's very important. There are 1,000 journals you can publish in, and so I would recommend to do that, so that people can find your scientific results. Another interesting thing here is that 70% of the 70% of the papers are published after the project end. That's the black area for Bonus Plus. Here you have Bonus Plus during project implementation. So science is a long process, and I do it myself after the project has been finished, the field work and the data processing and submitting the paper, etc. There, it takes time. So 5 years of publication after a project is not unusual. Then here come the newer projects that started in 2014. Here is a little summary. 11% of the papers are still published in books and conference proceedings. And this is also a result of different traditions in different fields of research, but it is changing. And because nobody's going to buy a book that costs 2,000 euros printed in Switzerland or something. So you will bury your research if you publish in books. Then you have, which are not, I mean, open access books is of course an option, but it's better to publish in scientific papers. Then we have 62 papers that were not mentioning the Baltic Sea, and this is mainly the Bonus Plus papers, because that has been improved also within Bonus. Open access is very, very important, and unfortunately this has been decreasing a little bit in Bonus. So I think this is something that should be turned back to more than 50%, if possible. Then how Bonus influence research topics. And this is really interesting because yesterday I showed the same for the whole Baltic Sea area, but now Bonus is lifted out, and you see that the specific areas where Bonus has been boosting science is social sciences, evolutionary biology, genetics, and environmental engineering. And then we have multidisciplinary sciences, technology, international relations, biodiversity conservation, multidisciplinary geosciences and toxicology, which also are increasing more in Bonus than in other research area, than in the other papers, the non-Bonus papers. There is a trend in time in multidisciplinary sciences, technology, international relations, but Bonus put a plus on that also. One area where Bonus had a negative effect was, for example, fisheries, and that is surprising, I think. But there are few projects in fisheries in Bonus, and then some more traditional fields of science that Bonus has not funded. The scientific impact now. There are two types of ways you can measure this, and citations is of course how a paper is used for the progress of science, but there is a delay in citations. After 3 years the level of citations stabilizes, so you can only use them after 3 years. But you can use also the impact factor if of the journals, if you look at a huge number of papers, but not at individual papers. I showed you yesterday that the connection between this is extremely weak. And because the impact factor is not a measure of the quality of the paper, it is what a few people, the editors and the reviewers, thought about it. The scientific impact of bonus is significantly higher. This is over time, so we can mainly look at the 3rd year when everything has stabilized, and then you see that the non-bonus papers and the pre-bonus papers, they are cited about 3 times a year, and the bonus papers 4 times a year on average. And that means that bonus has a higher quality of the science it publishes. And the same was found for the journal impact factors, but because these are lower than these, you can say that the Baltic Sea papers, and especially bonus papers, have higher impacts than other papers published in the same journals, which means that Baltic Sea science on the whole, but especially bonus, has a larger influence on science, in marine science in general. Cross-nationality. Here is a very interesting figure where you see that pre-bonus and non-bonus, there is no difference in cross-nationality over these 15 years. So people are still doing the same thing. But within bonus, you had 52% of the papers that were a result of cross-national publication. And you see the black bars, they have decreased for all countries here. And that is a great advantage, of course. When I don't show it here, but you can see in a table in the report that the country that has produced most within bonus is Sweden, and the country that has produced less, relatively seen, is Poland. And this is something I think the Polish decrease. Poland has decreased the portion of its research funded by bonus. So this is something I think we have to look deeper into and identify the reasons for this. So cross-nationality and scientific impact are related, and this is the figure I already showed yesterday. You see that the bonus, the red bars, are higher everywhere, and that means that the impact factor was highest for the bonus papers. And then you can say, okay, cross-nationality increases scientific quality. And that is something we know, actually, but there are not so many numbers on this. So this is a proof that this is true. And we also can explain this with different ways, and that is because, this is just some of the explanations, that these studies are more multidisciplinary, they are more cited, they are more meta-analysis, they are about larger areas of the Baltic Sea, they are combining models, and they are often part of pan-European or circumpolar, even global studies where the Baltic Sea is one of the areas that was studied. Then I come finally to my recommendations to bonus. And in the first place, and also to the people working in, the scientists working in bonus, publish in papers ranked in the Web of Science. There are many such papers, and I suggest to write in the contract something like the scientific output from a bonus project should reach other scientists in the best possible way to maximize the likelihood that it will contribute to the progress of science in the Baltic Sea area and elsewhere. Because I find it such a pity if science is lost by people, that people cannot get it. I would also stimulate cross-national cooperation even more. Bonus has done a tremendous, fantastic job here, but it can never be enough of this. Also, I think that Bonus should show the publications on the Bonus portal. It was a tremendous job to really sort all these papers, but now we have a list. I think it should be updated at least once a year in a good way, so that people can see what Bonus has been producing. The Baltic Sea must be mentioned in the text, and of course these are papers from maybe carried out in the Skagerrak, which is North Sea, but still connected to the Baltic Sea somehow, somewhere, or in the drainage basin. Somewhere you can write in the introduction the relevance for the Baltic Sea. Just mention the Baltic Sea, then people will find your publication. And Bonus must, of course, be acknowledged if bonus funding was used. Finally, I want to say just a few words about what I also said yesterday about the societal use of science, and this is it counts for all the research produced in the Baltic Sea, because most of it is about the environmental problems or solving the environmental problems. And in Bonus, this is even more important because it is policy-driven and solution-orientated research, which is financed by Bonus. And here I suggest then that there will be special projects which will be critical review and synthesis of the knowledge that we have, incorporated, combined with looking at the practical use of the science. So you have your knowledge as a scientist, and you go back and work together with the people who use the science and ask, are you using it? And actually, I saw yesterday that the project Bambi has done this, because it's a continuation of BALT Gene, and they found out, they had made so many good recommendations, but they found out that their science was used very little in society. And it is fantastic results, and it is fantastic important for the Baltic Sea environment, for conservation of biodiversity, but it is not used. So if scientists would get a project, a mission, okay, make a review and use it practically. I'm sorry, I'm going a little bit over time. So the problem is, what is happening in Bonus is that during project implementation, there is a lot of, and also in defining the projects, Bonus is very, very exceptional and very good in defining the projects together with the stakeholders who will use it in society. But then it is empty here. And here I would like to build this loop I talked about yesterday with special projects for evaluation, which also should be spread internationally. So it will give merits to the scientists also, because that's important to them. So I would like to end again with the seals. Thank you very much for listening.
Yeah, thank you very much, Pauline.